Welcome to Binge Guide, the next show, your one-stop shop for all the movies you'll be clamoring to see, the ones everyone will be talking about. And today we have some really fascinating stuff to dig into. We're doing a deep dive into a movie called Psychotherapy, the shallow tale of a writer who decided to write about a serial killer. First of all, wow, that's a mouthful.
It really is.
It's like a little story just in the title.
Yeah.
And then on top of that, we have this director, Tolga Karaslick, who I don't know if you're familiar with his work, but seems like a rising star.
Yeah. I think that the title really kind of sets the stage, almost like a little wink, a little nudge, nudge, wink, wink. Like, Don't take this too seriously.
Totally.
There might be some self-awareness here,
Yeah.
maybe even some irony baked into the premise. And Karaslick, he's really interesting. I mean, so this movie is about a writer. And
he's struggling,
right?
Of course, got to be struggling.
He's trying to write a book about serial killers. So, he decides to befriend a retired serial killer. Pretty normal research, right?
Yeah, sounds about right.
Man, who wouldn't do that? But here's the twist. This serial killer becomes his marriage counselor.
Wait, what?
That's right. And he's also consulting on the book about serial killers. I mean, talk about awkward and dark humor. This has it all.
That's just too perfect. And speaking of perfect, let's talk about this cast. We have Steve Buscemi as Colmick, the retired serial killer. I mean, Steve Buscemi, need I say more?
He always plays those wonderfully strange and a little bit menacing characters, right? I mean, think about Fargo.
Oh my God, yeah.
The Big Lebowski. He's got that look.
He just nails it every time. And then we have John Magaro, who he was amazing in past lives, playing Keene, who is this writer going through a divorce. I mean, what a departure for him. This seems like a much darker comedic role. And then Britt Lauer, who was so good in Severance, is playing Susie, Keene's wife. So we have like this really amazing trio of actors working on this film. So let's get into it. Let's unpack this.
Yeah, let's do it.
I mean, what are these sources telling us? We have the trailer, we have some early buzz. Like, what do we actually know about this movie?
Okay, so the trailer, it kind of lays it all out for us.
Okay.
Keene, he's desperate for inspiration for his book.
As writers are.
As writers are. Plus, his marriage is falling apart.
Double whammy.
Yeah, double whammy. So he meets Colmick, and then Susie, poor Susie, she thinks Colmick is there to fix their marriage.
Ah, the classic misunderstanding.
I know, right? The foundation for so much comedy.
Yeah. I mean, some of these lines from the trailer, I was dying. Colmick at one point goes, "I'm a retired serial killer." What? How's this going to work?
Classic Buscemi.
Classic Buscemi. He's just so perfect.
Right. And then there's Keene. He's like, "I'm going to teach you what killers do."
Oh, bless his heart.
Like, he can control this, this force of nature. Like, he can teach a serial killer anything.
Right.
And then poor Susie again, she's just like, "I was not expecting my husband to bring a marriage counselor to our home."
I mean, that's an understatement. If my husband brought Steve Buscemi home as our marriage counselor, I think I'd pass out.
Yeah.
But then it gets even better because Colmick, he starts trying to give marriage advice from the perspective of a serial killer. He's like, marriage is a living organism that can grow or die. And then he says, and I'm pretty good at killing living organisms. Like, come on, that is just, it's the delivery.
It's perfect.
It's chilling and hilarious at the same time.
Right, and then remember that scene where it's like this super intense rapid fire therapy session?
Oh, yeah, yeah.
How was your day? Shh. Maybe he thinks I'm trying to kill him. What do you mean by that? Tick, tock, tick. Am I going to die? Talk, tick. Will I survive? Talk, tick. You talk are going tick to die. Talk.
It's like pure anxiety distilled into a single scene.
Yeah, and it's funny but also terrifying because you're like, is he gonna snap? Is this whole therapy thing just a ruse?
Right, because, it's a serial killer giving therapy.
Exactly.
It's just, it's a lot to process.
Okay,
but what about the title? Right. It's Psychotherapy, the shallow tale of a writer who decided to write about a serial killer. What do you think about that shallow tale part? Is it just a self-aware joke?
I think it could be a couple things, honestly.
Okay.
It could be a way for them to say, hey, audience, don't worry, this is a comedy.
Okay.
It's not going to be some really intense, super dark true crime story.
Okay, yeah.
Right, we're having fun with this. It's ridiculous. But I also think it could be a commentary, maybe even a critique on our fascination with true crime, Like, we're kind of obsessed with this dark stuff, but are we really engaging with it on a deeper level?
Right, like, is it all just entertainment?
Yeah, exactly. And maybe that's what this movie is trying to explore, that kind of shallowness.
That'd be really interesting to see how they handle that.
Yeah.
So, Tolga Karaslick, the director, This is his first English language film.
Big move.
Big move.
Mm-hmm.
And from what I read, he's known for making these very personal and political films in Turkey. So this seems like a bit of a shift.
It does. But here's what's interesting. The whole idea for the movie apparently came from a conversation about couples therapists. Like, how many of us have had bad experiences with therapy, right? It's a relatable thing. But he takes this everyday anxiety about relationships and spins it into this totally bizarre and dark comedy.
I love that. Like, the seed for this whole crazy movie is something as simple as a conversation about therapists.
Right. It's like he sees the absurdity in the ordinary.
Yeah, totally. And he seems to be really good at blending tones, right? You mentioned he's made other films.
Oh, yeah. He's done films like Butterflies and Ivy.
Yeah.
And they mix surreal comedy and psychological drama. So Psychotherapy is definitely in his wheelhouse.
It makes sense. And, I mean, he's also a big fan of Quentin Tarantino and the Coen Brothers. So I can definitely see those influences in the trailer. You know, that kind of suspense, the dark humor, the quirky characters. It definitely feels like he's going for that kind of vibe.
Totally. That feeling of you're laughing, but then you're also a little bit scared at the same time.
Exactly. And let's talk about these characters, right? We've got the genie. He's perfect. Like we talked about, he can play those unsettling characters, but you also kind of feel for him.
He does this thing where you're like, I don't know if I should trust you, but I can't look away.
Right. And then Magaro, he's got that indie cred.
Oh, yeah. He's been in amazing movies like First Cow and The Big Short.
He just brings this like grounded realness to his performances.
Exactly.
And then Britt Lauer, who was so good in Severance. She's going to be amazing as this wife caught in this whole crazy situation.
Oh, absolutely. And it's not just them, right? We've got Ward Horton, Ollie Hoskevy, Sidney Cole Alexander.
Oh, I'm sorry, say that last name again.
Sidney Cole Alexander.
Got it.
And she was in Severance with Britt Lauer.
Oh, cool.
Yeah. And then John Turturro has a cameo.
Wait, John Turturro?
John Turturro.
Oh my God, that's amazing.
I know, right? And it's like a small part, but they say it's really significant.
Ooh, intriguing. And you know what else is interesting? Buscemi, Magaro, and Lauer, they were all producers on this film. So they're not just actors, they're invested in this project.
Absolutely. They believe in this story.
Yeah. So let's talk about the themes, right? I mean, it's a failing marriage, it's a serial killer, it's a book about serial killers. Where do we even begin?
Well, I think the trailer really hints at this surreal approach to the marriage, right? It's like this weird cat and mouse game between Susie and Keene.
Yeah, but with a serial killer thrown in for good measure.
Exactly. And I think the lines between reality and fiction are going to be blurred.
Especially for Keene.
Oh, for sure. He's writing a book about this guy. He's spending all this time with him. Who's manipulating who? I mean, is Keene trying to use Colmick for his book?
Or is Colmick playing some kind of twisted mind game with Keene?
Exactly. And then there's the dark comedy of it all. Like, how do you make a movie about a serial killer funny?
Right. But, I mean, the trailer does it really well. It doesn't feel like it's making light of serious stuff. It's more like the humor comes from the absurdity of the situation.
Totally. And it highlights those anxieties, those dysfunctions that we all have in our relationships.
So true. Okay, release date. When can we see this masterpiece?
So sources say it's coming out in New York theaters on April 4th.
Okay.
Then it goes wider, national release, and on demand on April 11th.
So April 4th for the lucky New Yorkers.
Lucky them and everyone else. April 11th. Mark your calendar.
Exactly. But it's already premiered at the Tribeca Film Festival, right?
It did.
And it won an audience award.
That's a good sign. People are digging it.
That's a good sign. And the reviews have been really positive. IndieWire called it a brilliant mix between Fargo and American Psycho.
Whoa. High praise.
High praise. The Hollywood Reporter said the director is intelligent, elegant, and he keeps the tension high without losing the irony.
It sounds like you really nailed it.
And Variety said that Buscemi and Magaro are one of the most intriguing couples seen recently on the big screen.
Even though they're not a couple.
Not a couple, but intriguing.
Intriguing.
I mean, that's saying something.
It is. Oh, and remember how the title was longer at Tribeca?
Yeah.
Apparently they shortened it for international distribution. Probably easier to market that way.
Makes sense. So streaming, will it be on Netflix, HBO, anything like that?
So one source said it might end up on HBO Max, Netflix, or Amazon Prime eventually. No official word yet, though.
Okay, so stay tuned.
Yeah, stay tuned. And one source said it might get a theatrical release in July 2025, but it seems like the April dates are the main ones for now.
Right, April 4th and 11th. Got it.
Ah.
Okay, spill the tea. What are the juicy rumors?
Okay, so get this. There's a rumor that this movie, the whole thing, is based on real interviews with criminals. Yeah, like actual criminals.
Say serial killer.
Including serial killers.
That is wild.
I know. It makes you wonder, like, how much of this is fiction? How much of it is based on real life?
Right. Like, how dark does it actually get?
Exactly. And one more thing. This is fun. Steve Buscemi improvised some of his lines.
No way. I mean, that's Steve Buscemi.
I know. So you know it's going to be good. Like, what kind of gems did he come up with on the spot?
I can't wait to see it.
Yeah.
So to wrap things up, Psychotherapy. The shallow tale of a writer who decided to write about a serial killer. Definitely a movie to keep an eye on. It's dark, it's funny, it's got an amazing cast, and it's directed by a rising star.
It's like a mashup of black comedy, psychological thriller, and a little bit of surreal marriage drama. What's not to love?
Exactly. And it really makes you think, like, how far would you go for inspiration?
Right.
What happens when you blur the lines between research and reality?
And can a serial killer really retire? Can they actually give good advice?
Big questions.
Big questions. So go check out the trailer. Seriously, it's worth it.
Yeah. And mark those dates, April 4th and 11th.
You won't want to miss this one.
Thank you for joining us on this deep dive here at Binge Guide. The next show, your go-to source for all the must-see movies coming out soon. We'll be back with another deep dive before you know it. See ya.